Welcome, everyone. It's great to see all of you here, still hungry to hear more and still awake. I'm Victoria Kimonides. I will be moderating this fantastic panel of delving into turning science into companies, and I would say anything in between. On the stage with me, I have 5 distinguished people, individuals. I wouldn't put labels on them, but I would like to invite one by one. Faye Christodoulou, a trailblazing molecular biologist and biotech entrepreneur. Someone that has been recognized for reshaping the space of biotech. Currently the Chief Scientific Officer of INTEGRA Biosciences. Faye. Professor Dimosthenis Anagnostopoulos, Secretary General of Information Systems at the Digital Governance and Ministry of Digital Governance since 2019. Also a Professor of Information Systems and Simulation in the Department of Informatics and Telematics at the Harokopio University of Athens, ex-rector as well. Professor Georgiou, distinguished professor at the University of Texas at Austin, an entrepreneur. I would like to give a few numbers for George, which we will be referring to as GG, because we have another George on the panel today. Hundreds of scientific publications, more than 80 patents, either in place or still pending, that have been licensed into biotech companies, and already listed a couple of companies and more. So we'll hear more about his journey. Next, I have George Varsos. Please join us, GV. A graduate of Cambridge University, currently being in the other Cambridge, experienced venture capitalist, a scientist that has gone into investments, and a great story there to delve into as well. And last but not least, where is Nektarios? Professor Nektarios Oraiopoulos, Professor of Operations and Technology Management at the Georgiou Business School. Not a scientist in our terms, but someone that has delved into the pharma company and looking into how science can bring blockbuster drugs, I would say. So thank you all for joining. I'll take my seat as well. We're here to explore how groundbreaking scientific ideas evolve into real-world businesses and get a better understanding of the journey on how researchers become founders, how labs become launch pads, and how innovation becomes impact. So today, all of you have walked through this path or have supported this path. You have faced challenges, you have made pivots, you have built companies that bring science into life. So let's start, I will start with the lady on our panel. Many people say that ideas just stay in the lab. Why don't you give us a little bit of your journey and what made you jump out of the lab and bring it to life?
Okay, it's a long story.
But make it short.
I'll make it short, yes. Yeah. So when I jumped out of the lab, I was a postdoc at IVEA here in Greece, actually. And I was working on, relative translational research, but more on the basic front, on thyroid carcinogenesis. So at the time, as a microRNA expert, I had found a specific microRNA, or let's say 3, that were distinctly present in papillary thyroid carcinoma, okay? So that was, in my view, in my world at the time as a postdoc, important and something I was proud of, because there was a long dispute in the field about Hashimoto thyroiditis and papillary thyroid carcinoma having different molecular profiles, and I was now seeing these microRNAs also present in Hashimoto thyroiditis. So in a summer course in the Bay Area, when we got asked to play a game and find a random partner and say, what are we proud of in our work, this is what I said. I said, this is important because now in the field, we know better and the fight can have more arguments in one direction. And he said, but don't you have like a diagnostic marker? And I was literally looking at him thinking, oh, yeah, I actually do. This is not what I ended up doing as an entrepreneur, but the point is, that moment, something clicked in my brain and I got liberated. And that's what allowed me to start thinking about what else I can innovate on. I never took something and spin it out of the lab as it was. I did more of the padrema of different advances in the field. And I had the experience at the time as a scientist, as a postdoc, to be able to manage to do that. But yeah, why it stays in the lab, I think it has to do with the belief in ourselves, probably, and also the environment. This is 10 years ago. Yeah, how much you think that you can actually take it out of the lab yourself in terms of confidence, and I didn't have that.
That's fantastic. It comes from within. No one tells you to do it. It's an urge. So I'll go to Gigi and then come to you, Dimosthenis. From your perspective, when was there a time when you realized that this has commercial potential? What was the tipping point for that realization, that decision to say, hey, it can go really out of the lab? I mean, you're very experienced in that.
The short answer is naivete. You don't know what you're doing at first, and you don't even know what you're doing. But to make a long story short, if you're working very hard on a project, on a scientific project, ultimately you, I think, need to understand what its impact is going to be from a social standpoint, and then you quickly realize you have to understand the other world out there, the business world, and then you have to understand what is the need and therefore the market landscape. So you start talking to people and you talk more and more and more to people, and then eventually you decide to make your move. And that's what happened in our case. And I was very fortunate. The first venture we had, basically, we were able to sell that venture within a year. I said, it can work. So the second venture, we raised the funds from VCs, a very interesting and different experience, and had a full-fledged company that went public, a very interesting experience. And then this third company was also one that went public. And in the process, and this is very important, I realized that, first of all, I'm learning a tremendous amount. Most of it I wish I didn't have to learn. But it was still a very interesting journey. To make a long story short, it requires a little bit of naivete and a conviction that you can actually get something done. And there is a possibility that you fail, but at least you have to try.
That's fantastic. I mean, this is the definition of a serial entrepreneur. You already said 1, 2, 3. And I would add...
now we're 4 and 5.
Exactly. That was the beginning. And I would add the social aspect that you mentioned, but you didn't line it up in the end. Because if you tell others, if you start going outside, you create the pressure to yourself that I have to do it now. So I think that's a good one as well.
I have to say that I ended up initially hating having to deal with attorneys, and eventually appreciated, no, seriously, especially corporate attorneys, because it's a very stressful process, but ultimately it's something that you appreciate the value of. And also, it was very uncomfortable dealing with investors. I now try to go to at least one investor conference a year because of the socializing, and because you meet people that think completely differently. The world is white. My world is red. I don't know. And I think that is quite fascinating from, a life story perspective.
I would like to go to Dimosthenis on the role of technology, and then we'll come back to the funding, because that's a bigger chapter. Because science doesn't happen in silo, and it's not just the lab and the test tubes and the testing. Technology, I mean, nowadays, and especially the past 20 years, has significantly improved and contributed to the outcomes of science. So, Dimosthenis, what's your view on that?
On technology, accelerating, okay. I understand I'm kind of a recent addition to the panel. I hope that would be the last to have the floor. So, Actually, what I would like to say is that from your perspective, you are absolutely right. But when you are from the business perspective or the government perspective, you kind of have the needs very evident right in front of you. So it's, I think, an advantage being on the other side of the hill, being able to understand what your needs are and going to the research community or the innovators and just state that this is something that I need from you, and then you're capable of having a much smoother transition from the idea to the product. Actually, what technology does is being the bridge between the scientific part and the product part. So science produces knowledge, and of course you need ideas from entrepreneurs to transform into products. And then you need a bridge to take this knowledge and transform it into something more applicable. This is what technology does. On the other hand, it may be also the case that technology is a substance of the research of science. So yes, in this case, you just pioneer in science in terms of technology per se. So you then have to take advantage of it. I would also like to take the opportunity, being in the position of Secretary General in the ministry, and say that in the last few years, 6 years, we had the opportunity to take not only products and get use of them, but also research deliverables, research ideas, and build onto them. Building interoperability in the Greek state, creating GovGR or the wallet. This was not something that we took off the shelf. This was not an off-the-shelf component. It was something that we built based on research ideas and people who were kind of expert in this domain. So both the way that we transformed this research into something that was very tangible for all Greek society, and also the way that we described our needs and mapped them into what was available from the research community, from the Greek research community, I think that was a very important key for our success. And the fact that Greece is recognized worldwide now as a very good example of delivering tangible results in digital transformation, I think that this proves that this government did something very important in the right way this late 6 years. So.
This is fantastic, and you're all here testifying that he will take the list that we will give him about what we need, in the biotech space specifically, right? So, second theme I wanted to touch is the funding, because how scientists find, as we say, their angel, and also with the component of the science and the technology that enables the product. What comes first? And I would go to George and then to you, Ari. What comes first? What attracts the funding? Is it the science? Is it the capability to bring it out to the market and scale with the technology? Tell us how you work.
Thank you, Victoria. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me in the panel. I want to say welcome to Secretary General as well. And congratulations to the organizing committee for bringing together all these people. A lot of brain power here, which gives me hope about the future of biotech in Greece. So to answer your question, I'll give a little bit of perspective from me. I'm a venture partner at a venture capital fund in the US called VU Ventures Partners. It's based in San Francisco and New York. It's a global stage early investing fund. We invest in several companies, including OpenAI, Figure.ai, and Neuralink, which is more relevant to healthcare here. I'm also an angel investor at Mass Medical Angels in Boston, so happy to share a little bit of my perspective. I think, it all comes down to the science and having the match between an unmet need in the market and a great science, right? Science is at the core. It's the compass. It's what drives everything. Once you have identified what is missing, what are the patients, what is happening to them, right? So what solution can provide? Then the science is absolutely important to make sure that it works. You provide the proof of concept. You provide the data, the evidence. This is all about what life science and healthcare is important of, in order to be able to show to the people that your solution works, and also to show evidence to your investors that you know what you're doing, and it's a risk mitigation for them. So I think it's really important to show very early on that your solution works, and try to build a story overall. On my day-to-day job, I do business development for Mass General Brigham, so Harvard-affiliated hospitals. So I manage a lot of principal investigators from the Harvard ecosystem, and the one thing that I tell them is come to me early. Let's discuss your idea, let's discuss about what you're thinking, what solution, and what kind of evidence you have, and what kind of evidence you can provide to the world. That means stakeholders that can support you. Stakeholders, including investors as well. So showing that from lab data, from moment go, that your solution works, and then builds the story, in vivo, in vitro, around, and clinical trials. It's a pathway that you have to build on. So science at the core, but you don't do that for the sake of science. You do that to solve a problem.
Thank you. That's clear. And Ari, I'll come to you. You have been working with VCs that invest in biotech. What are the insights from the way they treat the early stage scientific discoveries?
So I think it's important to understand what they do and what they are good at as smart money. And you might disagree with that, or I know we have a few investors in the room, but broadly speaking, we're not very good at predictions in this industry. So nobody knows what will work or not. And I think the good VCs know that and they understand that. And there's plenty of evidence. I think if you were in the presentation by Stelios Papadopoulos on Monday, he showed that graph about the monoclonal antibodies that the Royal Patent Office saw no commercial opportunity. And you might say, well, this is some odd British bureaucrat who rejected that. But the rest of the story is that every big investor, because we've heard the story from Sir Gregory Winter himself a couple of times, everybody in the world, the big pharma, whoever could invest in biotechnology, rejected monoclonal antibodies at the time. And it was only, he had a friend in Australia who was a gambler doing horse racing who saw maybe the monoclonal antibodies can make the horses run faster. And you might say, well, that was 40 years ago. Now we're much better at prediction, but the success rates haven't changed for the last 30 years in the industry, even when you start clinical trials. So again, the point here is that it's really hard to say if something's going to work. And I'm only talking about therapeutics. I'm not talking about digital health or digital therapeutics. So what they are good at, the investor, is they are very good at efficient capital allocations, and they cut their losses a lot faster than other, corporate mechanism in this environment. So the implication for an entrepreneur or a startup company is that the process is not that you're going to go and impress them with a 5-minute pitch or an hour or your PowerPoint deck and you'll say, oh, this is going to be the next Ozempic. That just doesn't happen. The way they work, again, there might be exceptions in the room, we can more than have it talk offline, is that they have a very long list of red flags, sometimes over 100 of those questions, and you have to be prepared to address those questions, ideally with evidence, or at least to convince them that it's worth spending time with you to address those gaps. And then we'll come back later on, or sort of how do you build a team to address those gaps.
Excellent. On staying on the funding, I'd like to ask Faye a very direct question. How did you get the first funding?
With a microphone.
With a microphone.
Yeah, the very first, so part of that summer program gave us $1,000 and unleashed us for 5 weeks to prepare a proof of concept and a viable business plan. So with that money, I had to come up with an experimental design and work with the engineer in the team and have a prototype, a very early prototype, as you said, to show. And I made a mistake in designing all the primers I had to. So there was like a time crunch, and I needed, the 1,000 wasn't enough. So actually, the first angel money came from a friend of one of my co-founders who just gave us $1,000. And then I could repeat the experiment, and actually it worked really well. So with that first super rudimentary prototype, we went to, we started engaging with VCs. Naturally, we didn't raise a round immediately, but the relationship, just to add on what George said, it's really important. Establishing a relationship and showing how fast and with how little money you make progress. That's really impressive. It shows, it speaks enormously.
You deliver, yes. I really wanted to have Faye saying that on stage, because we were discussing about the BioStart competition, and we have the finalists tomorrow. We're discussing about the prize money, that is just symbolic, I would say. And Faye was like, but I started the company. I started the company with the 1,000. And I think it's very important, that very first step. And also the second thing that Faye said that is important is the POC. So it doesn't matter how little the money is, it is the conviction and making that first step. Everything else follows. So.
And can I add one more component? Because I think that's a Greek superpower, because those who do research in Greece have to develop these additional skills of mega planning, because we have the distributors and the time to delivery, and they're extra long and unpredictable. So you have to really plan out and order your reagents on time. That superpower allowed me to deliver the scientific part of the team in record time, despite the mistake, with that little money. So use that, guys.
Use that. Excellent. Gigi, I'll come to you. Yeah. On whether you face, you can have a stereo now, it's like two. No. Did you face any skepticism for any of the ideas, companies that you launched from the investors? On timelines, on feasibility?
How much time do you have?
Very little. 2 minutes.
The answer is, of course you do. It depends. You have to find the right match. You have to talk to a lot of people before you find the right person who shares your slight off-kilter thinking and agrees that this is a good idea. Look, VCs, no offense to VCs, but they tend to run in packs. They invest on the same thing, in the same idea, they go to the same conference, by and large. Of course, there are exceptions, and therefore the innovation sometimes is not really funded initially by VCs. You have to have the special match, your special person. And that can take time, can be very frustrating. Also, you should be able to pivot. Okay, you think you're going to do A. We thought we have a drug for cancer. It turned out that actually it became an approved drug for a rare genetic disease. Okay, the path became even more interesting, but you have to be able to absorb some of the input that you have and be able to act accordingly. One point that I've been wanting to make since yesterday, there was all this discussion about comparing us with Israel and Ireland and other countries, etc., etc., etc. You have to look at countries that are similar to Greece in the demographic and GDP and everything, like Portugal. Fair Journey Biologics, I don't know if anybody knows them. A crazy guy in Portugal started a company that in 10 years grew to about 1,000 people, 1,000 employees, and it spun off other companies. Same thing has happened in the Czech Republic. Same thing has happened with CDMOs in Lithuania. They used some government support, but also there were people that drove this. They had the know-how and the conviction to proceed, and that requires a lot of determination. And of course, one idea succeeds, a lot of them do not succeed.
Quick estimate. What does the funnel look like? Like, to how many do you need to talk to before you just hit that one that is slightly aligned with you?
The first one, 110.
Well, that's better than the last one I heard, which was thousands.
The second one, 4. We talked to 4 VCs because I had the connections. There was a company that had gone public. Talked to 4 VCs. We got 2 term sheets. I said, it was the right time. It was the right opportunity. If you're Demis Hassabis, you talk to one person, or they talk to you and they give you a check for $600 million, as they did for isomorphic. So it depends on who you are to some extent, but for the rest of us, it's also a matter of luck.
Okay. You want to add something, George?
Yeah, it all takes one at the end of the day. And don't forget that, Starbucks and Airbnb, they pitched to over 200 investors, and we see where they're now.
Mm-hmm. Good, so let's switch gears.
May I comment on that?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah?
Using this mic.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that, being a professor as well, that I have to be very frank on that. I think, to my understanding, the problem is dual. First is the orientation of the Greek research community, especially university professors and researchers as well, because they're not product-oriented. They very much like to have deliverables, but they like to have research deliverables and funding, not product-oriented. And the second is that we're Greek, and we have a very distributed research community in terms of resources, and we don't very easily join forces and decide that this is the one that will lead us towards this direction. We cannot be experts in all domains, but we can be experts, for example, in education or in AI or in healthcare, but in AI in healthcare. But we have to decide our areas of expertise and then commit that we have a leader and that we're going to follow this leader and actually do what we have to do. And this is not very easy to do. We cannot convince ourselves sometimes, and we are very reluctant in persuading both ourselves and others in this respect. So yes, it's a matter of culture to understanding sometimes, and have to be very frank, big professor as well.
While you're having the mic, I mean, you're kind of begging for the next question, which is how the roadmap that you have with your not professor hat on, but your Secretary General professor hat on, how does the roadmap that you have for the government and the infrastructure, the AI, can support this transition of science, especially in the area that we're discussing now, to the market, especially when we talk about real-world data?
Okay. I think that our Prime Minister described it in the most convincing way just a few days ago, on Friday, and I think that I agree that it's to a great extent a matter of infrastructure, as George said, and have to be very frank also saying that George has put tremendous work and effort, and there are very concrete results, so congratulations in this respect. But it's not only a matter of infrastructure to my understanding. You have to build an ecosystem. To have an ecosystem, you need data, yes, as you just mentioned. You need to have people, researchers being very experts in a specific domain, and a government scheme for governing all this. And you also need the proper funding. Yes, our government succeeded in having Varsos, which is a very pioneer project, being one of the 7 factories. And the issue is how to build a cluster, a very strong cluster, a very good ecosystem around this. So yes, this is the first very tangible target that we're going to have with tangible results. Except from that, you need to have a focus, and sometimes you need to have a very, very, I would say, urgent requirement to deliver something. Because in Greece, when you're very pressured, when you're under pressure, sometimes things get to be done more easily. So if you have a mandate related to funding or any other type of mandate, then perhaps things and people will be much more easy to persuade and join forces and work harder in order to deliver. And I think this is the right way to persuade the Greek research community and also the Greek public administration to deliver results. Have a very strict mandate, and this is how things can be done. it was the era of the coronavirus, with COVID-19, which proved that, yes, we can deliver very good results in a very short time, also being pioneers in some objectives, in digital transformation, for example. And I think this is this is an example that we could build on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Quite insightful. One last, I mean, it's not a last question, but last theme. When it comes to the team, science is a team sport. Maybe I start with you, George, Gigi, on what is the skill set that you seek for in the team? I remember you were telling us how one member of the team was doing something, the other something else. The complementarity.
There are different stages.
Yeah.
Early on, there's one person that you need, a good lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for corporate, IP you can handle. If you start thinking about IP, you can get the idea of what you need to do in the IP space. Of course, you need money because IP is not cheap to file. That's an issue. But you need a good lawyer. When it comes to executive talent, that's a different story. It depends on the stage of the company. There are very, very few people that can actually do what it takes to launch a startup very, successfully. There are people that are aspirational. They would like to be able to do that, but I don't think they may have the network, the resources, and even the temperament to be able to do that. Nice. So I think the researchers ultimately have to bootstrap and basically learn what they need to learn, make mistakes, and see what they can do. And if you're lucky enough to find a really motivated, smart person that can do the business end, you're very fortunate, go with that person, but it's not very common, in my experience.
George, you have experience also from the IP that was mentioned earlier.
I do, but I want to briefly touch base on the team that my fellow George said. I think it's important for the team to have complementary skills, scientists and also business as well throughout the stages. But what's really crucial, you mentioned about motivation, is to make sure that the motivation is the same for everybody. Some people might want to solve a problem, create a solution. Other people might want to make just money. Right, there's going to be divergence if there's no motivation that's concrete between the whole team. So I want to emphasize this really importantly. Mm-hmm. So from an IP perspective, obviously I work at the Tech Transfer Office in one of the largest academic medical centers in the US, MGB. It is crucial to have strong IP, intellectual property. For people that don't know here, it means patents, it means know-how, copyright, etc. Something to protect, what's your secret, what's your magic sauce, right? It's extremely expensive, but from my perspective as an investor, it won't be the one thing that will persuade me to invest in something. It's like, a safety checkbox, to be honest with you. Is because what it does, it blocks the competition, but it doesn't do everything else for you, right? So it's a checkbox, and I know I wear two different hats here, but I think it's crucial to protect the IP, but don't count only on that. There's a whole array of things that you need to have in the right place.
But you agree you need a corporate lawyer.
That's true, always good to have a lawyer.
It's interesting you say that, because especially with technology and AI, the patent in the traditional sense that we know it is not really applicable. It's much more difficult to secure AI patents in a way. So I mean, it's a big discussion, I know, but...
Do you want to touch base on that?
No, later. Okay, we don't have time for that. But I just wanted to put that, because in the UK, there is this trade secret, which it can be a secret as long as you keep your processes, we have everything kept. I don't think that it's very common in many other places, but maybe George.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The problem with trade secrets is unless you're a large organization that can defend a trade secret,
it means nothing.
It means nothing because you cannot go after Microsoft and sue them.
Exactly.
You lose.
And you spend a lot of money as well. So I want to move to, you have another comment to make?
Just quickly, on the AI and software, obviously I'm not a patent attorney, but I work with a lot of them in the US. I think it's important to understand that, software changes, and if you patent something, it's locked, right? And software is not locked. It evaluates, it changes over time. So in the end, it might be worthless, but something to consider talking to an IP attorney about this.
I want to move to Ari on how science is presented, how through the studies also you've done, how you see science is represented to investors. I mean, have you seen scientists change a little bit their story so that it's better received by investors?
I would certainly agree with the point that George made earlier about that a lot of scientists, I guess George might be the exception, that they want to learn that process, but many more, they don't. And I think it's actually a big challenge in China at the moment, that they have a lot of good science, but not necessarily experienced people who can take them to the next step. Of course, that's why, speaking of teams, people say that this is a people business as much as it is a science-based business. And it really, you need to find that business person that you trust that will take your baby from the lab to the next step, which I understand it's a big thing. Some scientists are much better than others and walking without the support, but I think the vast majority, simply because they come from a very different world, they would need that training, and there's no excuse that this is not available. In any part of the world that you are, there's just so many information online, or events like that provide this opportunity. The BioInnovation in Greece is an initiative, so there's definitely no excuse to say, oh, I didn't have that opportunity. Then if you say that, then as, again, the panel was saying on Monday, you're not for this business.
Faye, you want to add anything to this?
Just don't try to save money on legal, ever. You pay for it later.
You'll pay for it anyway, right? No. Good. I'm looking at the time, and I think, I think we have time for the questions. Before we open up for questions, I just want each one of you to give one phrase on how you would, describe what it means, turning, what it takes to turn science into companies.
From my personal experience, because my co-founders were coming from the world of tech, and I was the scientific founder and just an academic at the time. I didn't have experience in entrepreneurship. What I learned, and now we talk about a lot, is that unlike tech, which is like a sprint, biotech is like a marathon. So there's unpredictable timelines, longer timelines. There's a regulatory component. There is a lot more funding needed. So marathon, that's the word. Yeah, it's a marathon.
Dimosthenis?
I would like to stress out that this is, to my opinion, a turning point for the EU, because AI is going to change how technology is applied, then how innovation is spread around the world. So, given that we were not very fortunate in cloud technologies or AI developments in the recent years, I would imagine that it's very crucial for the EU to be competitive in the existing domains such as the automobile industry and pharmaceuticals, and also being able to compete in the forthcoming years with the States, with the United States, and also keeping in mind that China is something that we're not very aware of which developments may come from China. So I think it's very important that
the competitive component.
Competitiveness in Europe is increased, and for us to be sustainable in the forthcoming years, to try and do our best in AI.
Excellent, thank you. Gigi, what does it take? No, for you, it's for you.
I'm GB, you're Gigi.
He's GB.
I don't know. As they say, predictions, actually Feynman, I think, said predictions are hard, especially about the future. And we live in a world that everything changes so fast. I don't know. All I can tell you is that from past pardon?
It just happens?
No, from past experience, it takes a little bit of basically craziness of, because it requires some dedication and belief in an idea that probably not too many other people have. And frankly, in my case, because I had to invest my own money in every instance, not much, but I still had, it was painful. That was a great motivation, by the way, in terms of making it work, because otherwise it would have been painful.
Thank you, George. I wish there was a magic formula, but there isn't. But I would say there is a framework, obviously. Find an unmet need, use great science, collaborate, create teams, and just go for it. Teams gives a confidence, teams gives a trust that you can do something great. If it's not, just pivot and do something else along the same way, but just go for it.
Thanks. Aris?
Yep. Just building on that, on the collaboration and the teams, that events like this, again, are very important because they allow you to connect with people. And yes, it is a business, as many times we've repeated in this conference, like, yes, eventually you want to make money to give back to your investor, but I would say, because I'm at a business school, so we see across industries, other people from other industries, there's an unusually high level of, drive, purpose, because at the end of the day, most people join this industry to do something good for the patients, which is not necessarily the case in many other industries, right? So that common purpose, you have plenty of people that, they share that purpose and you can collaborate with them.
Great, thank you. So you heard it all. It takes a little bit of craziness. It takes running a marathon. It takes the network, thinking out of the box, being competitive, to turn science into companies. And I think we have 14 minutes for questions.
Hello? Oh, okay. First of all, my congratulations to the innovation team, the BioInnovation team. It's a first-class event. It has everything: science, finance, commercial. Anyway, given your experience with IPOs and acquisitions, are there any underlying patterns behind the motivation of the acquirers? Let's say defensive, strategic. And let me give you an example of what I'm facing in Greece. It's a totally different, just to give you an idea, it's a totally different company. It creates titanium-based nanomaterials that go into coatings, self-cleaning and stuff like that. And it took some time, the so-called homologation period, to adapt the material into coatings and stuff like that. They have a very powerful patent. And the question that we get from VCs is, yeah, but the market footprint is not exactly, you've been around for 5-6 years and stuff like that. And I keep saying to them, the acquirer will not buy you for the footprint necessarily, the market, your global footprint. They'll buy you for your R&D's capability to translate what you have in the lab into the industrial process. It's one thing to have one material that cannot go into the production processes of a big pharma or even the product line of a contract distributor. So with your experience from the States and I guess from other countries of Europe, is there any pattern behind the motivations of the acquirers that you can relate to us? Thank you.
I can start, and we never went public, so you'll hear from Gigi more related to that. But it sounds from what you described that perhaps you should be also spending time to talk to strategic investors, not just venture capitalists. So the actual companies that you want to build a relationship with and end up showcasing the value of the product you're developing so that you become an acquisition target. And regarding their interest, in our case, we were fortunate, we were acquired because there was a new market vertical the company was entering, the genomic space that they prior to the acquisition were not really present in. And our product serves exclusively that, so they expanded and now have partnerships and a footprint there. we also talked to companies that it was becoming slightly evident they would maybe shelf us, so that seen as competitors. So these are signals that you have to really spend time cultivating relationships and not do it in a rush, naturally, because then you have no way to tell. So that you can read behind the lines what's the actual interest. And I have friends who have got acquired approximately the same period and had excellent products working remarkably well, and they're shelved. So it can go either way. Ideally, you identify one where you feel there is complement, it will help them expand their product portfolio.
Yeah, from my experience, I would say that there's no specific pattern. I mean, I agree with what Faye said, but it's all over the place. And when you have this kind of situation, you're trying to do due diligence. It goes both ways. It's bidirectional. They do diligence to acquire you, or have a license with you, but you also need to do diligence with them in order to understand what their motives are. Companies like Johnson & Johnson, for example, have a huge investment arm, and they do investments in order to complement their portfolio, right? So here you have the strategic initiative. Other companies, I have an example of a licensee of ours. They had an exclusive license with us for a therapeutic asset. For many years, they didn't do much with that, right? So effectively they sold it. What can you do about that, right? It's impossible to predict everything happen in the future. You start with good intentions, so you try to do research as much as possible to understand what they want. But at the end of the day, it depends on what you want as well, right? You want to have a product in the market, but if you're an investor, you want to see a return on your investment as well. So you have to balance out all the motivations, all the interest there.
As a very quick follow-up on that, I think even the VCs or even the business development people in the pharma, they wouldn't know because it's very erratic. They could have a new CEO, search a new strategic priority. Next thing you know, you are on the top of the list. So I guess the advice is to try to talk to as many or seek the evidence and reading between the lines, as Faye was saying, to see, okay, what's the underlying reason and if there's a good reason for that or is it a speculation?
One more thing to add, there are some that will engage in conversations, misleading you to think you will get acquired, and frankly, all they are trying to do is bleed you to death, so they just snatch the IP. There's also that, also something to read behind the lines. Good advice.
If I can add something to the last part, if you really want to make a product, that's where also having a good lawyer helps, because you can structure an acquisition deal where nothing happens in X number of years, then you can get some reversion rights and then try again.
Thank you.
So my question will go to Dr. Anagnostopoulos, and I will start with a pleasant comment and a slightly unpleasant question. So the pleasant comment has to do with your university. You know that there was a group of 30 American universities that visited Greece at some point to explore opportunities for collaboration with Greek universities. I can tell you that Harokope University was ranked the first. And this this is feedback I got from 2 different universities in the United States. So I want to congratulate your university and your colleagues for doing that.
On behalf of my university, thank you so much for your comments.
So now I'm getting to my question. So I heard you said that we need to build an ecosystem in Greece. Yes. So in my point of view, because this term comes from ecology, which is what I have studied, is maybe if we discuss about entrepreneurship, this is a global thing, and we should maybe mention this as our habitat in the global ecosystem, how we can improve our habitat and the etima, like we say in ecology. So my question is, in ecology, the driving force for creating an ecosystem is natural selection. And this depends completely on excellence. So if our habitat or our ecosystem has excellence in all steps of moving from the discovery to the application, it should work naturally. So my question is, why do you think we have failed in the past years in doing what is natural?
Okay. Thank you for your question as well. Now, we have to think Europe as our home. So it's not an issue that relates only to Greece. When you say this, you actually mean that the one who is better and the one who is more advantageous
the best
should proceed, and the others should somehow diminish or something like that. It's not like that in Europe. It's not a matter of regulation, it's a matter of culture. So we just don't need only one which is the champion and the others being left behind, solely behind. We can have mechanisms in Europe that promote cooperation and enable joining forces, which is also vital for the integration, strengthening, and having a Europe which is deep enough in the way that people and institutions work, and governments and states. So I think that natural selection is a way to proceed, but not the only one. So we just need complementary models to work in Europe. Now, the issue is not about natural selection or not. The issue is that in Europe we have not promoted entrepreneurship and being product-oriented in the last many years when we talk about research grants and funding in universities, research centers, and also the industry. That's why we don't have that many products, and we're not that competitive right now in terms of cloud technologies and other technologies that US has proceeded far, I would say, faster in the last years. Telecommunications. We're pioneers in Europe just 10 or 15 years ago. Now we're not. So it's, of course, my personal opinion that I'm expressing here, but it's something that has to do with the culture and the way that we work together as European citizens, and the fact that we should not be oriented towards regulation that much, but innovation. And I think this is something that we all agree now, but theoretically speaking and philosophically speaking, this should not be very late to consider.
Maybe, Kostas, to use your analogy, I think it's not just about the survival of the fittest, and the strongest, because that also doesn't promote the collaboration. To use the analogy, I would say it's more about the ecosystem services, if we take nature, supporting the development of the ecosystem. And also, to have a leader, you also need to have the people that will follow, and they will contribute. The two things that I've learned is that you need to build on others' ideas and strengths, and you also need to have your share in delivery, which is where you need to be strong. So that's my two cents. Other questions? Mike.
I wanted to comment on that competitive imagery as well by saying that there is a competition, but at the same, or at least there are different success outputs, but it's more complex than you might think. I mean, among the top institutions in the UK, which I know very well, then some of them have much greater commercial outputs for their equivalent quality of research than others. Why is the reason? Well, at Cambridge, 30 years of osmosis. A few pioneers made it happen, others saw, they followed it. And I would say, I'm not in Cambridge, but university, I live there, but it's not a very efficient process, but there are enough people who really want to do it, and those successes will come out. I'm at Imperial College, it's different. It doesn't have that track record, and the outputs are less. And there's a cultural difference in the kind of paradigm, and the tech transfer offices have been completely different, and they have a massive, massive impact on whether investors want to be there at all. So, there are a number of different factors here, and you can change the culture of the academics, you can make them want to do it, but that doesn't mean necessarily they can do it. There's another big element which affects success, is whether the groups can get funding for the last step of validation of their technology, which is understood to be a bottleneck by everybody. And I think in the American system, I believe there's more grants can be more targeted to that. In Europe, including the UK, it's more of a problem. So I think that there are more separate pieces to this that affect a difference in outputs. And yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, the thing is, I can tell you that the universities will always be very inefficient entrepreneurial engines. The key thing is that the gems make it. And so don't worry about getting them all through. Make sure that the gems really make it. And that's why I left industry to go to Imperial to try and help do that.
Thanks. Thank you. I think that we have time for one more question. If we have time. Sorry, there is. Yeah, sorry. We do. We'll take 2 questions. Yeah, short.
Okay. My question is, this is kind of more of a tactical question, but as a founder/manager, once you've identified some companies that you believe would be good strategic, they would be potentially the right targets for acquiring you. How do you recommend going about opening that communication, assuming they've already going to know who you are? Do you recommend having a go-between? And if you do, like somebody mentioned a lawyer, what kind of credentials do you look for, or do you think that the company can start that on their own, just opening those, letting them know about the opportunity?
Very quickly, depends on the stage of the company. If you're an advanced company, you need a banker. If you're not an advanced company, no, seriously, you need investment bankers. If you're not an advanced company, you need other kind of people. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do we have time for...
No questions. Sorry. Apologies. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. You have been a wonderful...